Now to how the French papers are reacting to that big change, big political change in French politics in the Senate. Elena is with us here in the studio to flick through the newspapers. There's only one story in them, isn't there?
They do all have pretty much the same front page headline. Let's look at François here. Historic. The Senate moves to the left. This man here on the front page is Jean-Pierre Bel. He's the leader of the Socialists in the Senate, so he will now be leader of the House. And it says under that picture that makes him the second most important person in the French Republic, which officially he is. Although, nevertheless, this is quite a symbolic move because the Senate doesn't really have that much power, at least not to block the laws that are passed in the lower house, but it can slow them down and generally be a thorn in the government's side. So this is important, and of course it's the first time that the Senate has turned to the left since the institution was created after the Second World War. So you know, it's not to be underestimated. It's certainly not gone down very well on the right. On the Le Figaro, their front pages, the Senate turns left, and they have to admit in their editorial that it is a significant setback for Nicolas Sarkozy. They do, of course, try and play it down a bit, saying that seeing as the Senate is actually elected not by the public, but by local and municipal councils, this is just a product of the fact that most of those local elections went to the left over the last few years, and next year when people are voting at a national rather than local level at the presidential election, then they'll be thinking about different things and Sarkozy might still win. But they've got to admit it's a bad move for the president.
OK, you're going to turn left yourself now. Look at Libération, the left-wing newspaper here in France.
Yes, they're over the moon, as you might expect. Their headline this morning is the taking of the palace, making it sound a little bit like the Palais de Luxembourg, where the Senate sits, had been stormed by left-wing guerrillas. Inside, in their editorial, they say, this weekend, Saudi women got the vote, neutrinos went faster than light, and the French Senate turned to the left, just pointing out how exceptional this seems to be. They do say, of course, that it seems to be naturally right-wing, that chamber. It's a kind of halfway house for retiring French politicians, really, so it has a natural right-wing bent. But they say this is more than a symbolic vote. It's a warning shot across Nicolas Sarkozy's government's bows that something needs to change, otherwise they will lose next year's presidential election.
So are you finding any analysis then? I suppose the big question now is why has this happened in the papers?
Well, there's plenty of reasons you can choose from. According to Le Parisien, they list a whole number of factors why people don't like Sarkozy. There's the austerity measures, not as severe as in some European countries, but they've still made 10 billion euros worth of savings over this last year, putting up taxes on stuff like tobacco, alcohol, second homes, and there's also plenty of corruption scandals to choose from as well if you're looking for reasons. Of course, last week, 2 of Sarkozy's friends were arrested for supposedly taking suitcases of cash in kickbacks from arms deals to Pakistan and funding election campaigns with them. Then there were the suitcases of cash he's accused of having received from African presidents and the envelopes of cash he allegedly received from France's richest woman, Liliane Bettencourt. So the paper says all of this really affected his popularity, which is now at an all-time low of 24%.
And the right-wing paper Le Figaro, they're also blaming splits within the right-wing party itself as well.
Yes, a number of Sarkozy's former ministers and advisers who had fallen out with him decided to run for the Senate on their own independent right-wing tickets. And in a lot of local areas, they beat the government's official right-wing candidate. So that's also a first. The French right turns out to be more divided than the left at the time of an election.
Elena, thank you very much. That's Elena here with her look through the papers reacting to that big change in French politics here in France.